أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا إن جهنم كانت مرصادا للطاغين مآبا لابسين فيها أحقابا لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساكا جزاء وفاقا إنهم كانوا لا يرجون حسابا وكذبوا بآياتنا كذابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا فذوقوا فلن نزدكم إلا عذابا إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم تو ساتواں مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم تیرا بابا امام صادق ہے جس کے دم سے ہے جعفری سارے دین و مذہب سبق عبادت ہے ہم کو سایے اسی کے در سے ملے تو ساتواں مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم ہے کرامات مرتضیٰ تجھ میں سائلوں کے بھی عطا تجھ میں رجو ہوتی نہیں کسی صورت سانس لیتی ہے وہ دعا تجھ میں تو ساتواں مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم تیرا بیٹا امام ضامن ہے جس کے قبضے میں رات ہے دن ہے وہ خراسان کا ہے شہزادہ ہر شفا اس کے در پہ ممکن ہے تو ساتواں مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم تیری دکھ تر ہے کم کی شہزادی اس کی چوکٹ پہ دے صدا جو بھی جولیاں اپنی بھر کے لاتا ہے غم سے ملتی ہے اس کو آزادی تو ساتواں مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم مولا تو بھی در ہوائج ہے تیرا سکہ جہاں میں واج ہے ہم تو ہر امتحان سے گزریں گے دینے والا تو ہی نتائج ہے تو ساتواں مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ کاظم یا موسیٰ salawat.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Hasan, Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin, Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Dua Shifai Maries is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah. Before tonight's majlis, I'd like to invite Brother Aliaskar Bandali to please come forward and say a few words on behalf of the family of Marhuma Farha Yusuf Ali. Wa Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. A mother's arms are more comforting than the arms of anyone else, because a mother is she who can take the place of all others, but whose place no one else can take. A mother is a gift to the heart, a friend to the spirit, an honest advisor, and most of all, a confidant whom you can share your deepest secrets. But today we have lost our beloved mother, my first teacher, my first companion, my first caretaker. However, our mother's legacy lives on, and her contributions to our community as a workshop teacher, someone who woke up early on Sundays to feed at the homeless shelters, someone whose heart ached to assist others and change the injustice around her. Most importantly, she may have gone, but part of her lived through us, her children. For a son, a mother's love is seen through a natural need to protect her, the need to wipe her tears from her eyes, and the need to comfort her. However, in our family, it was our mother who stood by us when we needed protection. She stood by her siblings when they needed a supporting hug. My mother's hearty laugh and her immense capacity to constantly serve others was her identity and her love language. Our mother was an incredible woman, with her constant smile and contagious laughter, which warmed our hearts and the hearts of those who knew her. Most importantly, our mother was most cherished by our marhum grandfather Husseini Yusuf Ali, and we stand in comfort and give solace to our hearts as we know she is with him. I don't have many memories from when I was young because of my age, but there's one memory that I remember very clearly from when I was in elementary school. Every day my mother would take me to school, and she would drop me off, and I would cry because I would miss her. And this happened on a day-to-day basis until one day my mother gave me a picture of us as an entire family. Every day she told me that whenever I feel sad and I feel like crying, to look at this picture and that everything will be okay. And then she was always waiting at home for me with a hug when I came home from school. If there's one thing that I have learned from these past few days is to never wait to tell your parents that you love them, and to never go to sleep angry with anybody that you love. On that note, we want to earnestly appreciate the community for facilitating the burial services, and we sincerely thank you all for coming and paying respect to our dear mother. Furthermore, we should like to apologize on her behalf if she has intentionally or unintentionally hurt anyone, or if she owes a debt to anyone. Please feel free to contact me or any of the family members. Finally, we deeply pray and hope that her love in your hearts is translated to prayers and du'as for her, especially in this beloved and blessed night. If we can please recite a Surah Fatiha for my mom and all other marhum. Salawat.
Let us now invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi for tonight's majlis. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Once again, let's recite a Surah Fatiha as well as Surah Ikhlas 3 times for the beloved soul of Marhuma Farha Yusuf Ali. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات الله محمد وعلى محمد Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight on the 25th of Rajab, we are commemorating the Shahadat of our 7th Holy Imam, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. Before we get into our main discussion, I just wanted to share one story. You know, when we have these deaths in the community, you know, sometimes we have connections and relationships, we know the individuals, sometimes we don't. And, you know, in my position, you know, I'll come and I'll lead the Salatul Mayyit and help with some of the other rituals and, you know, speeches and things like that. But it's not always that I have and I actually know these individuals. Sister Farha, Marhuma, we did know her. And when we had first moved from Qom here to Orlando, she was one of the first individuals to offer her full help and support for everything that we needed. And I'm saying that without any sort of takalluf or, you know, exaggeration. She was one of the very first ones to reach out to us, contact my wife, say, what do you need? You have kids. My wife was pregnant at the time, so she was there fully offering her support, and this is the kind of individual that she was. And inshallah, that same loving quality has been reflected in all of her family members, especially her children. And we hope that and pray that they can live on and continue that legacy of her being able to show that love to all those around her. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we talk about the Ahlul Bayt, the Imams, you know, they have these titles that we recognize them by, these famous titles. And more so, those titles usually, not always, but usually they have something to do with a specific quality that was needed in their time. And we normally associate that quality with the main action or characteristic of the Imam while they were living, right? So, for example, when we talk about the fourth Imam, obviously we think of Sajjad and Sahifa Sajjadiyya and these du'as. Now, just because we know him and recognize him by, all these munajat, all these beautiful du'as, we obviously in the back of our minds know that, well, obviously every other Imam, they have these beautiful du'as as well. They had these connections with Allah. It just so happens that the fourth Imam was famously known for these things. Or when we talk about the idea of ilm, of knowledge, scholarship, teaching. Now, all of the Imams performed hidayat. They guided people. They taught the general masses when possible. But normally, when we talk about schooling and education, ta'aleem, ilm, we think, of course, of the fifth and more specifically the sixth Imams. And there's very socio-political reasons why. What some of the ulama say is that although all of the Ahlul Bayt, right, they're nur wahid, it's one light, but when they manifest and reflect that light of Allah in their specific area, in the circumstances and the time and place that they happen to be in, they're doing so perhaps for a reason based on the needs, or rather the deficiencies of the people around them. So they would say that, for example, the reason why you see certain Imams being known for their sadaqah and charity happens to be because of the extreme poverty of that time, or rather the lack of people's giving sadaqah at that time. Or when we think about Imam Sajjad, the reason why these du'as are known is because they say that people had completely lost their spiritual connection with Allah. This is why he needed to emphasize it, re-emphasize it. Same thing with the fifth and sixth in terms of scholarship. So when we look at the life of the seventh Imam, he's Al-Kadhim or he's Bab al-Hawa'ij. Usually when we think about these qualities, what sort of issues would have existed in the society at that time for us to understand the Imam as somebody who is the door to granting people's needs, their hajat, their desires, and their wants? Or why is he known as Al-Kadhim, meaning the one who, as we know, Kadhimin al-Ghayth, the one who's restraining his anger? No Imam has anger problems, right? So this doesn't really make sense. So what kind of restraint perhaps is he doing? Is it from people, who have bad akhlaq that are angering him? Or was it a specific situation of the Muslims at that time that he now has to respond to? So inshallah, that's what we'd like to discuss tonight. And the way that we're going to enter this discussion is, one of the ways that we understand the Ahlul Bayt and the missions and the actions that they performed in their specific times, one of the clearest ways we figure that out is the sort of conversations, orders, letters that they sent to their best of the best companions. And because we look over there, we say, look, the general public, they have one set of instructions they give to. But when they truly see a need in society, the Imams would go to their, we say, top level, elite, best of the best companions. They would give them instructions and commands, and they would hope that there would be this sort of trickle-down effect and everything would come from there. So one of the most famous companions of the seventh Imam is, of course, Ali ibn Yaqtin. And there's many, many different stories about him, right? And in terms of all of the companions of the Ahlul Bayt, the various ones, he is one of the most famous ones. So what I want to share, inshallah, is one of the commands that was directly given to Ali ibn Yaqtin. In that story, or in this command, there's some pieces of information, some sort of pieces of wisdom that I think we can maybe use and reflect on what was the situation at the time of the Imam that Ali ibn Yaqtin needs to address. And then for us to understand, hopefully, to see if those same things apply in our society right now. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So most of you know Ali ibn Yaqtin. There's a long biography for him, but to cut things short, he ended up with the Khulafa. He was working for Harun. And normally Ali ibn Yaqtin is brought up generally by Shias when they want to say it's okay to work with oppressive governments, it's okay to work with any sort of government because we have Ali ibn Yaqtin. It's a very sort of superficial argument. And the reason we say that it's superficial is because of the fact that Ali ibn Yaqtin did not want the position in the first place. In almost every step of the way, he went to the Imam constantly, seeking permission. And even after the Imam said, no, for the good of the Shia, you have to remain there, performing taqiyya, remain as his advisor, as Harun's advisor, but do this and this. And there's all these mu'jizat, you've heard those stories before. We're not going to go through those mu'jizat tonight. But even then, after getting permission from the Imam, over and over again, Ali ibn Yaqtin, just his heart couldn't handle it. He did not like being in the court of a zalim. And nobody should like being around an oppressor constantly, giving them advice and things. Again, even though the Imam had said, no, stay in your position. So over and over again, Ali ibn Yaqtin would go back to the Imam or write letters and say, please relieve me of this duty. I can't do this anymore. Find something else for me to do. Find me another way to help out the Shia. Give me something else. I just don't want to be here anymore. So he would almost constantly be going and reaffirming or kind of regaining, recertifying his permission from the Imam. And constantly the Imam would say, no, you need to stay in your position. So one of those times, this is where I want to share this part of the letter or the back and forth between Ali ibn Yaqtin and the Imam. So I believe this was a letter. And again, he's asking Imam, please give me ijazah, let me leave the court, let me just go back to my life, let me do something else. So the Imam tells him or writes back to him, La taf'al. Don't do that, meaning don't quit. Stay where you are. فَإِنَّ لَنَا بِكَ إِنسَ. Because we now have a connection to insan, meaning the general masses. We can reach to them through you. We can reach the people through you. You have become a wasila for us, actually. And again, understand the environment. Harun was constantly trying to make sure that the Imam was not in connection with people. Because this was the problem with the Abbasids. They knew the status of the Aimma. They knew that if they were allowed to go out to speak, the people would get attracted to the personality of the Imams and they would lose their power. So at every step of the way, they needed to make sure that the people and the Imams were disconnected completely. So the Imam saying, look, you are our connection now to the people. He says, وَلِإِخْوَانِكَ بِكَ عِزَّةً. Our ikhwan, meaning our Shias, our Muslim brothers and sisters, they are getting izzah and honor and dignity through you as well. وَعَسَى أَن يَجْبُرَ اللَّهُ بِكَ كِسْرًا. And he's like, and you know what? Through you, actually, it's possible that Allah may force something down through you, a sort of defeat, a sort of a breaking up. And what kind? He says, وَيَكْسِرُ بِكَ نَائِرَةُ الْمُخَالِفِينَ عَنْ أَوْلِيَائِهِ. It's like, it's possible that through you, Allah will use you as a wasila because you're there and you have Harun's ear. He's listening to you, right? And because of that, Imam is saying you have the ability to break, literally saying that the fire or the hatred of the opponents of the Shias, you may be able to break that from him. It's possible. You have that possibility of doing something like that. Then he says, Ya Ali. Again, not Imam Ali, Ya Ali ibn Yaqtin. He says, Kafaratul a'malakum, the kafara for what you're doing. Because he's like, look, working with a zalim in a normal circumstance is a sin, it's guna, it's a ma'asiyah. You can't do that normally. So Imam is saying there's a kafara. That's here. The kafara for your a'mal, what you're doing, is al-ihsan ila ikhwanikum. You need to make sure you're doing ihsan to all of our ikhwan, usually in the secret code of the Imams meant Shias, right? He said, look, the only way for you to make up all the dhulm that you may be kind of tacitly participating in and helping out is if you are helping out your Shia brothers and sisters. And not just helping out. He doesn't say nasr or anything like that. He says ihsan. And ihsan is, a bigger discussion. Ihsan means you need to not just do good to people. People say ihsan means do good. No. Ihsan means you need to make something hasan or hasana. You need to beautify your actions. You need to go above and beyond for our Shias. He's like, you have that position, you need to do that. Then the Imam says, look, let me solidify this and make this stronger for you. إِضْمَنْ لِي وَاحِدًا وَأَضْمَنُ لَكَ ثَالِثًا. He says, look, Ali ibn Yaqtin, he's like, look, if you guarantee me one thing, I can guarantee you three things. You do one thing for me, guarantee one thing for me, I'll do three things for you, a guarantee in return. So I want to actually change the order of the hadith. I want to go to the three things that the Imam guarantees to Ali ibn Yaqtin. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the first thing he says is, وَأَذْمَنُ لَكَ أَنْ لَا يُظِلَّكَ سَقْفُ السِّجْنِ أَبَدًا. He said, First thing is that I guarantee for you, Ali ibn Yaqtin, that you will never feel the darkness of a prison ever. Again, this is a secret code saying that you can keep in your position. I'll ensure that Harun will never figure this out and you'll never be in a prison because of what you've been doing. You'll never see the darkness of prison. The second, وَلَا يُنَالُكَ حَدُّ السَّيْفِ أَبَدًا. And you'll never feel the effects or the edges of a sword. Again, saying that because of your position, what you're doing, obviously there's a safety risk. So I'll make sure you'll never be imprisoned by any of the khulafa, like Harun, and he'll never kill you as well. You'll never be assassinated for what you're doing. And the third thing that he guarantees, وَلَا يَدْخُلُ الْفَقْرِ بَيْتَكَ أَبَدًا. And I'll also make sure, in our terms, that Harun never sanctions you. That economically you'll always be okay. You'll never see poverty in your house. Not just for him, but his family, basically. And in anybody who would be in these similar positions, who is trying to do what is right, these are normally the three fears that people have, again, in extreme circumstances. If you're really trying to fight against dhalimeen, it's either death, that's a fear, or going to prison, or having your money removed. Like think about all of those countries, for example, that stand up against arrogant powers. Usually they're monetarily, financially sanctioned, or they're bombed, or attacked, or destroyed, or they're imprisoned, or captured, or kidnapped. Right? These are the normal tactics of dhalimeen, and they still continue to this day. So these are the three things that the Imam said, I'll guarantee for you. So now let's go back to the hadith, right? Because I took it out of order. So what's the one thing that the Imam's saying, I need you to do one thing for me? These are the three things I guarantee for you, but you have to do this one thing for me. So he says, Ya Ali, idman li, guarantee for me, an la talqa ahadan min awliya'ina illa qadayta hajatahu wa akramtahu. Yeah. Guarantee for me that whenever you come across any one of our Shias, you never let them go away without fulfilling their hajat. And on top of that, that not just that you fulfill their hajat, but وَأَكْرَمْتَهُ, that you have to give them and show them karama. Show them a higher level of dignity and honor. And if you remember, for the wilada of the Imam, we talked about this a little bit, about the sort of ma'rifah behind khidbah. Sometimes you can do a favor, you can help somebody out, but usually there's a jab alongside with it too. Right? It's you hand out something in one hand and you're slapping the person in the other hand. And this is not a way of, you can fulfill their hajah, right? Maybe financially or physically, emotionally, whatever it is, but you're also disgracing the individual as well. And we talked about at that point that this is not the true way for helping a brother or sister out. So this is the one thing the Imam is saying. It's like, if you can do this, then these are the three things that I guarantee for you. And then at the end of this narration, he says, Ya Ali, man sarra mu'minan, whoever makes a mu'min happy. فَبِاللَّهِ بَدَأَ وَبِالنَّبِي صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ ثَنَّ وَبِنَا ثُلْثُ. Basically saying that if you do that, then Allah can completely change and transform your life. You have basically praised Allah, you have praised the Nabi, and you have done a great service to us. In other words, he's saying, this is the sort of way you can manifest the qualities that we have too. You have become a wasila for us. The same thing that you and I always discuss, we know the Imams are role models. How do we do the same thing? The Imam is literally giving the instructions. The Imam that we call Bab al-Hawa'ij is telling his companion, you can become Bab al-Hawa'ij as well. Becoming Bab al-Hawa'ij not only means taking care of hajat, whatever that end goal is, but also making sure that you are showing a special level of grace and honor and nobility to those individuals as well. Now what does that mean? That's something else for us to discuss. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we talk about helping people, fulfilling their hajat, their needs, the first thing that comes to our mind is always the financial part, right? Yeah, there's people in need, right? We say welfare, right? They need money, we'll help out, we'll give this, and that's good, that's a part of it. But to a certain degree, that's an easy thing to do. It's very easy, again, especially in our times, especially when sometimes it's not even cash that we're handing out, right? It's just transferring electronic funds and things like that. Some of us don't even feel the fact that we've lost something in that sense, right? The economic financial support relative to the other parts of support that are required for a mu'min to help another mu'min, the financial part is very easy. And yes, it's a mention in the hadith that we should help people in financially, giving sadaqah and zakat and all this. Yeah, that's there. But perhaps what was a greater need, or what was the biggest issue around the time of these imams, especially the seventh imam, was not that type of support. And there's a whole discussion on what the imam did to actually provide economic support for the Shia. Because there was actually a whole sanctioning program done by the Khulafa like Harun, where they would make sure that the Shias would be in abject poverty. And Imam al-Kadhim was able to secretly gather all these funds from various wealthy individuals, was able to distribute it among the Shias. So much so that actually it was known to Harun. It couldn't be hidden. And Harun really couldn't do much about it. It was very difficult for him to stop that. The Imam had set up a strong network throughout all of the Muslim empire at that point. Money was coming all to him, to the Imam, and he was spreading it out. And the Muslims, because of they weren't feeling the effects of the Abbasid sanctioning. So at least in that point, there was a strong economic support built. But some of the ahadith that we see from the Imam don't necessarily focus on that part, meaning that it seems like the Shias were readily there to give out dinar or dirham over and over again. He would come to Hajj with big piles of money and give it to the Imam. So that doesn't seem like it was their issue. Perhaps it was something else that we would call making the support holistic. There was a piece missing which perhaps led to the Imam being Kadhim, al-Kadhimin al-Ghayth, the one who had to restrain his anger from a few things that upset him. And what is that? They say that this was something that is much more important than financial support. It's the spiritual and emotional support that those in need require. It's easy to give a handout to somebody, but to emotionally and spiritually support them alongside that is a very, very difficult thing to do. Look at this one. There's many different narrations, inshallah, we'll have time to go through, but let's start off with this one, inshallah. If you can recite, a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The seventh Imams reported to have said, "Aunuka lid-da'if min afdal sadaqah." That you're helping a da'if, a weak individual, a helpless individual, is the best type of sadaqah. And usually when the ulama comment on a hadith like this, usually they say, like, when we have this idea of fadilat and comparing and contrasting ideas, it's sometimes because that the Shias who are being addressed here, they were able to do certain tasks, meaning that they were giving sadaqah. They were, their wallets, their accounts were open. They were free-handed, which is good. But the problem was that when they saw some individuals who had other types of weaknesses, spiritual weaknesses, emotional weaknesses, they had other issues in their lives. Over there, the support wasn't there. The support system was not built. And sometimes this is where we ourselves, as individuals and even as communities, we fail in a large way, in a major way. It's good that, as individuals, as community members, we're able to, when possible, help out, donate and give money to those in need. That's wonderful. But the problem is that alongside that, sometimes there's this harsh methodology. There's a system in the back of our minds of trying to ensure that we know exactly how our dollar should be spent when we're giving it out to, the fuqara or those in need, who need it for something very specific. And because of various different reasons, maybe personality issues or maybe the way people were raised, there's this love or gentleness which is completely missing from the way that we try to help one another. When we see that, look, when somebody is in a state of poverty, whatever level of poverty it happens to be, when they have a haja, when they have a need, obviously there is going to be an emotional, psychological decline. There's something lacking there. No one likes to go and spread their hajat like that and come and ask, right? We have this in the riwayat. It's demeaning for somebody to come and ask. Now, on top of that, somebody comes and is able to actually express their needs. Now, we should have taken care of the need before they ask, but let's just say they had to come and they had to ask. Fine. Then the problem is, then we start asking a bunch of questions and researching. Well, what are you going to do with this? Didn't you ask last week? What's going on over here? We turn into the IRS all of a sudden. It's a very, very offensive way of spreading that money. And we've talked about this before as well. Yes, we have a few narrations where the A'immah would question some people, but this is few and far between. We don't have many narrations like this. The general body of narrations is normally the Imams just giving huge, large amounts of money. And then, on the other hand, in the other extreme side, we have the imams giving huge amounts of money to their enemies as well, to those whom they knew are going to do haram things. So how do you reconcile these ideas? Now, the point here is not to say don't do research and be, stupid with giving out money. That's not the idea here. But the idea is, how dignified is your sadaqah going to be? Think about the words that you choose before you decide to help somebody out. Think about what this individual's had to, or his family, or organization, whatever it is, what they've had to deal with in, kind of going out, having their hands stretched out to ask somebody, we need this, we need this. It's a difficult position to be in. Do you want to add on to that, we say ignobility? No, we would never want to add on to that. To keep in mind that people in this state have a, there's a psychological, spiritual, and emotional, I'm trying to find the right words here. They're obviously at a loss in that sense, right? Again, not just the financial part, but there's other things that are happening in their life. So when you see, for example, this is the famous example that people talk about around here. Again, normally when we see non-Muslims, for example, on the street, in a normal intersection, and people always ask, should we give or not? We know what they're going to do, right? They're meth heads. They're going to go and buy meth or drugs. We know what they're going to do. Like, okay, let's just say 100% you know that they are addicted and that's what they're going to do, for example. What would you do, or what can you imagine you would do in that sort of situation? When you've lost your home, you've lost your job, you have nothing there. Most of these individuals, they have no family left. If people know these same situations, when they go to shelters and family, these get booked up. Or sometimes the situations there are worse because they can be abused there. And I think you know what I mean if you've read articles on this. So it can be a very, very tough place to be. So they end up having to sleep on the streets. And we know how extreme the weather can be in places like this. So if they've slept on the streets, they don't have a place to go and wash up. Now they're on the street with these signs asking for something. And the first thing that comes to our mind is, they're going to spend it on drugs. Okay, even if they do, not to encourage the behavior, but isn't there some part of you that says, they deserve some sort of release? At the end of the day, after you and I have gone to work and done whatever we need to, some people, they come back, they want to have chai, they want to have, they want to watch TV, they want to relax. We all have our own sort of addictions and ways that we need to relax. They don't have the luxury of going to sit at home and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, because they don't have a home in the first place, nor the ability to go and buy these types of things. Now, again, this is not condoning this behavior. It's trying to really empathize. Somebody in this situation, what else are they going to do? Why do you think that you know better how you would act in that situation? And I pray that Allah never puts any of us in that situation. Because would we want our community members saying the same thing, that, so-and-so, they go out and this is what they do with their money? Well, so be it. Sometimes that's the way it has to be. Yes, you can try to guide if that guiding is going to be with love. If that love and that care is not going to be alongside your help, it might be better that you actually don't help at all, because you might be actually making the situation worse. Look at these other narrations, again from Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. Ar-rifq nisful aish. Gentleness, kindness is half of life. Look, most of us know that, yes, we need money to get things done. That's very clear. We know that. And we usually frame things in a way that in order to help people out, we need to make sure they have the basic standard of living. But once they get their food and things like that, and money and a job, they'll be fine. But imagine you have the job that you need to help your, to live, even if it's paycheck to paycheck. You've got a home and all these basic necessities. But if the people who are around you, whether it's your close family members, whether it's your extended family, or in maybe perhaps unfortunately our situation, the community, if they are rude and they are insulting in their behavior towards you, then how much value does that money really have? According to the Imam, it really is only 50% of life. How many of us are looking for that gentleness from others? We're always demanding that same thing. We always want that kindness from everybody else. It's very rare that we actually look inward and say, am I actually showing that same rifq and gentleness and kindness to other people? Especially to those who are da'if, meaning they are weak spiritually and emotionally. They don't have the spiritual, emotional stamina to have that higher level of akhlaq that hopefully you and I have. They can't be patient in some of these adversities. In another hadith, the Imam says, التودد إلى الناس نصف العقل. And sometimes we rationalize why we can be mean to them. If I'm not harsh with them, they'll never learn their lesson. They're just going to be stuck on the street all the time, or they're going to spend their money like this, the wrong way all the time. The Imam is saying, showing love is half of aql. Don't think you're being rational by being harsh to people. Don't think that bad akhlaq is your way to help individuals out. We know ayat of the Quran, ahadith, over and over again, the seerah of the Imams. When do we ever see them teaching somebody, again, majority of the time, outside of zalimeen and things like that, when do we see them using harshness as a tool to help them out? Very, very rare. Maybe one or two occasions you can look at the lives of 14 ma'asumeen and see that. But we know, Allah tells the Prophet, if you had been harsh with them, they wouldn't have accepted you. The Ahlul Bayt, even with the zalimeen, those who stole their rights, their own family members, who were rude and mean, who were trying to get them assassinated, they were still kind to them too. This idea of being loving and kind and gentle to those who are weak and in need is a higher level of akhlaq and a higher level of intelligence. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that this is something that I've seen in many community members which does not exist. There are many of our community members who are in situations, maybe not financial situations where they're in need, but they may be in a situation where emotionally they're going through some things. Spiritually, they may be lacking in some places. So their iman is not at the peak level. Mentally, they may have some issues that they're struggling with. And instead of individuals forgiving their behavior, being kind to them, going out of the way to show extra love and understanding and empathy in that situation, what do? They're harsher. They start saying, this person doesn't come to the center anymore. Or, they're going to the wrong place. And when they come to the right place, all of a sudden then there's these strange jokes and comments. Do you actually think that these, offhanded jabs are actually going to bring people back? Do you actually think that's going to work? I'm saying this because I've been a party to this, where individuals come and say, it's nice to see you here. What kind of comments are these? How in the world do you think that this is the proper way to invite people towards a strong community? This is not the way to attract people towards haqq. And then imagine that person. If they're coming to a place, right, to quote unquote build bridges or whatever word you want to use is, if they're doing that and then they're shut down with jokes and jabs and things like that, I tell you, I wouldn't want to go to that place. And you'd be in the same position. Why would you want to go to some place when you know you're going to be insulted or laughed at, or you're going to be the butt of everybody's joke? You're not going to want to. It's sometimes very tough to tolerate this sort of behavior. It can be very, very difficult to do that. And especially individuals who, let's say, may have certain deficiencies in terms of their mental capacity because of certain mental health issues, or because of a difference in akhlaqi approaches, or some neurological issue, whatever happens to be. Sometimes it's physical disabilities, emotional ones. There's a lot of different issues that are there. Some, we can say, okay, it's not a big deal. This person, physically handicapped, I can go and help. But when somebody's emotionally or mentally, in need of help, why is it that now our helping hand is not there anymore? And then all of a sudden the harshness in us turns on, and the ghibah starts. And I'm sorry to say that I'm especially speaking to the sisters, unfortunately, that these comments and this harshness comes out of nowhere, and the ghibah starts. And this is a very, very sad thing to see in the communities. And my hope and my husn al-dhan is going to say that it's not the majority of the community members, but unfortunately it is still there. And I have been there. I'm not just saying it's something randomly that exists. It's happened in front of me multiple times. And this is something that needs to stop. Again, another hadith from Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Laysa husnul jiwar kaful adha. He says, and he's using the word good neighbor over here, but we can extend the idea to community or society. He said, the idea of being a good neighbor or a community member or a member of society is not simply stopping yourself from annoying other people, right? Like doing aziyat to people. He's like, that's not the best thing you can do. He says, وَلَكِنْ حُسْنُ الْجِوَارِ الصَّبْرُ عَلَى الْأَذَى. The best thing that a good neighbor can do is not don't be annoying to people. It's rather when somebody else is rude or annoying to you, or what you perceive as annoying behavior or difficult behavior to swallow, you need to have sabr. That's what being a good neighbor is about. Or a good community member or a family member. Yeah, look, I'll be the first to say, some of you are very annoying, and some of your behavior is very strange to me. It's very tough sometimes, different things. And there's going to be cultural differences and the way that we approach things. Some people, because of various issues, might be very blunt, or their style of speaking might be, very dark humor, whatever it is. I've gotten used to it. And I'm sure you've all had to tolerate a lot of my behavior too. It goes both ways. Maybe some of you just don't like my style, and that's okay. I thank you for your sabr for that, alhamdulillah. But this is the height of Bab al-Hawa'ij. And this is the height of what perhaps Imam al-Kadhim had to deal with. Is yes, we have all of these Shi'as going around and financially supporting. And he was able to collect this, great. But those same Shi'as who were being emotionally and spiritually sanctioned, he said this is something that we can't allow to happen. We can't tolerate this behavior. And so perhaps the anger that he was holding back was his anger with the Shi'as and their behavior with one another. And how perhaps when they see certain individuals maybe engaging in actions with the Zalimeen of the time. Maybe some people knew about Ali ibn Yaqtin, perhaps, and they would start speaking behind his back, whatever. Well, Imam had to now withhold and restrain his anger against that. A lot of people talk about, especially in international politics, how, these are the greatest enemies of Islam and these countries or these governments, this and that. But you talk to a lot of Muslims, they say, look, we are our own worst enemy. We destroy ourselves from within. And if you look in the history of the Ahlul Bayt, it's those ones who profess the love for the Ahlul Bayt, which, because they were there, they had that proximity and they were able to hug the Ahlul Bayt, they were the ones, unfortunately, who also had a dagger in their hand too. And it's those individuals who have the ability to stab us in the back. And we pray, inshallah, that when we look at the lives of the Imams, and we hear these stories all the time about these ones who betrayed, who performed khiyanat, and betrayed the Imam for various reasons, whether it was fear of life, or poverty, or imprisonment, or again, in the situation with the Ahl Kufa, because the women and the children were begging their fathers to stay home and do not go and support Musa ibn Aqil. There's always factors that'll keep us away from the right thing. And not just the right thing, but the best thing to do in a situation. Don't let people hold you back from that. If deep down, if your fitrah and your nature is clean, you should know what the right action to do in a situation is, or rather, the best action in a situation. It's good that we are, helping out people in a physical sense, and when they physically need things and they need help. It's good when we are, donating and giving out welfare and money, and giving out sadaqah. That's wonderful. But if people in our community are emotionally being blackmailed, if they're spiritually being pushed aside and being criticized for not performing what we consider the basic wajibat, but for them it's a struggle for them, whether it's hijab or praying or anything, then we have a lot of work to do as a community. There's a lot more for us to go through. And we shouldn't be surprised when we do see some people who are what we call seasonal Muslims, and they only come once in a while. So yeah, maybe perhaps the reason they don't want to show up all the time is because they're interacting with you and I, and we're pushing them out. Why would they want to come to a place or any place where they're being treated like this? Where not just behind their back, but in their face, they're being spoken about in a very, very harsh manner. And I hope those who know what exactly I'm referring to don't mind that I'm referring to it very specifically. And there's a very specific reason I'm referring to this tonight. This behavior can be very difficult for us to understand. It can be tough for us when we see how individuals are reacting and interacting. We don't know what's going on in their minds or their heads. But that is the heart of empathy. To be able to say, look, maybe I don't know how to put myself in their shoes. But what I do know, at least in my own self, is I've been in a situation where I know the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. I believe in Allah, I believe in the Usul ad-Din, Furu ad-Din. I come to lectures, I read books, I did all this stuff. I know what I should be doing. But in my own life, I know that I'm failing on almost a daily basis. I know I'm not perfect as a husband, as a father, as a brother, as a community member. I know that I fail constantly, that I could be doing better. So why is it that when I see somebody else in their struggles, why do I expect so much out of them, but I don't expect that same thing out of myself? The teachings of our Ahlul Bayt say that everyone else deserves that husn dhan to the utmost, that they deserve the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. And in fact, the Imams have said that whenever you meet any other person, you should to yourself say, this person, khayrun min, they're better than me. The goodness that they're doing, even if I don't see it, Allah has hidden it from me, so I can't see it, but they're definitely better than me. But what I do know, definitely from within me, I know the evil that I'm doing. I know the gunah that I'm doing. I know the bad akhlaq that I've been partaking in. unless I'm being dishonest with myself. So we pray that Allah gives us tawfiq to make sure that we are not the types of individuals that push people outside of the community, that we are the type that welcome them in. We are the type that set us up that we can sometimes, in dealing with individuals that may come off as, it's for us it seems it's rude or strange or annoying or difficult to deal with, that we learn from the example of the 7th Imam, that first we say we want to be Bab al-Hawa'ij in the way that he was. That the way he was teaching his ashab, that no, you have a haja, you have a need, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, whatever it is, we are going to manifest this trait of Allah, of the Imams, and we are going to take care of whatever you need. And that trait that you might need right now is sabr on my behalf, and I'll try my best to do that. So we pray that Allah give us the tawfiq to do that, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. How sad and difficult must it have been for our beloved Imam? The Ahlul Bayt, we know that they share in the various types of masa'ib and musibah that have taken place, right? Their 7th Imam, we know he was poisoned. Many other of the Imams were also poisoned as well. But the way that Imam al-Kadhim, his relationship, or rather we would say the lack of his relationship with the Shi'as, was something that broke his heart. They say that every single Khalifa, he was alive contemporaneous with 4 Khulafa, all of them constantly, over and over again, would pull him away from his family, place him under house arrest, or place him in prison, isolation, keep him away from everybody, and then send them back. And then do this over and over again. Can you imagine, number one, how the Shias would have felt being distanced from their Imam, but more importantly, this Imam who wants to guide and teach and show his love to his followers, how constantly. Yes, Imam Ali, he's struck with a sword, a poisoned sword, in front of the Muslims. So the Muslims are there to try and their best to take care of him. They're a witness to that. But what about our beloved Imam, who's sitting alone in a prison, kept away from everyone else? They say that when this prison guard offered him these dates, a plate of dates, the Imam had known what was there. And he began eating just a few of them. They say after a few of them, he stopped and he pushed the plate away. And the guard told him, no, you have to finish all of this. And the Imam said, look, I know what you were hired to do. I've eaten enough, your job is done. What you needed to have been accomplished has already been accomplished. The effects are already being felt on my part. Meaning, I've eaten enough. The poison's already coursed through my veins. We remember how, when we talk about Imam al-Mujtaba, they say that the poison was so strong in his body that his body had turned green. But they say the situation and the type of poison used for Imam al-Kadhim was different. They say one of the Shias had come to visit him, and they said, Ya Imam, kayf halkum? What's your state? Tell us how you're doing. And the Imam, because of his weakened state, he could barely move, they said. Instead of speaking and saying, he said, let me show you my halat and my state. He took his hand, he went to his companion, he opened it slowly, and the person said, Yabna Rasulullah, why is your hand pale? Why is it white like this? He said, the poison that's been put in my body has completely done away with any blood that's been flowing. And he showed his whole body. His whole body was pale and there was no blood flow left in his body. This is how harsh this poison was. And even then, for the Zalimeen, this was not enough. While the Imam, according to some narrations, the Imam was still alive, they said, no, we want to embarrass and take away the dignity of this person so the Shi'as know never to mess with our Khulafa. So they say they took a carpet, they rolled the Imam in the carpet while he was still alive. They ordered individuals to sit on this carpet until the Imam suffocated. And that's why some hadith say that the Imam didn't just die from the poison, but it was the effect of poison as well as being suffocated by having all of these mal'oons sitting on top of his body while being wrapped up. Then after this, they took his body wrapped in a carpet and they dragged it through the streets of Baghdad and left it on a bridge. And they refused to let anybody come and see, except that when they came, they would say, you Shia, beware, if you want to support him, this is his. This is your divine leader. Be careful who you show your support to. How difficult must it have been when the news of the Shahadat of our beloved Imam reaches the house of the Ahlul Bayt. When they say when it reached the house of the Ahlul Bayt, Bibi Masuma was very young at that age. And Imam al-Rida had come and had told his sister, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, the imamat now has transferred. And she said, no, there's still time. Maybe I can still see our father. You know, my heart still longs for him. I haven't been able to see him in so many years. She said, no, our father has passed away. She says, how do you know this? No letter has reached us. No information has reached us yet. It says, because I am a person of imamat. When our imam passes away, the imamat transfers over to us, and now I have felt the burden of imamat. So send your condolences to our father now, because he is laying there on a bridge. At that very moment as well, Allah transported me to perform the Salatul Mayyit and help with the burial rites of our beloved Imam as well, since no one else can perform this. How difficult must it have been for this young Bibi Masuma to have been away from her father over and over and over again all these years, and to hear this information and this musibah of her father. But we'd say, Ya Sayyida Ma'asuma, what is worse, being away from your father and not seeing his situation, or when we see Bibi Sakina on the plains and the battlefield of Karbala, being dragged through in chains and in ropes, seeing the decapitated head of her father, wanting to lay down and say, Ya Baba, I want to go to sleep and take one more nap in your chest. How difficult must it have been for Sakina, saying every night to say, I want to just hold the head of my father one night. That's the only way I can go to sleep. And the way Bibi Sakina passes away is when she's finally, that last night in Sham, is holding the head of her father. What daughter should pass away in a state like this? ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. Let's recite one more Surah Fatiha for the blessed soul of Marhuma Farha Yusuf Ali with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کاظم، 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 غریب بے کس و لاچار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کاظم، وطن سے دور شہادت ملی ہے واویلا، وطن سے دور شہادت ملی ہے واویلا، کوئی نہیں ہے عزادار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کاظم، اٹھانے آئے جنازہ بھی آپ کا مزدور، اٹھانے آئے جنازہ بھی آپ کا مزدور، یہ چاروں سمت ستمگار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کاظم، شہید ہو گئے غم خوار موسیٰ کٹی ہے باد شہادت بدن کی زنجیریں کٹی ہے باد شہادت بدن کی زنجیریں ہے عکس عابد بیمار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم وطن میں بیجیا تقتی ہے آپ کی راہیں وطن میں بیجیا تقتی ہے آپ کی راہیں ہے مشکلوں میں گرفتار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم جو زہر آپ کو ظالم نے دے دیا مولا جو زہر آپ کو ظالم نے دے دیا مولا وہ زہر بن گیا تلوار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے موسیٰ کاظم ظفر سجا کے غریبوں دیار کا تابوت ظفر سجا کے غریبوں دیار کا تابوت اٹھا رہے ہیں عزادار موسیٰ کاظم شہید ہو گئے غمخوار موسیٰ کاظم سورۃ الفاتحہ
دعا فرج بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم اللہم کل ولیک الحجت ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أخيك العباس وأختك زينب والكلثوم وبنتك سكينة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان السلام عليك يا إمام الإمام الإنس والجان أجل الله فرجا وسخر الله مخرجا وظهورك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته